Hello, hello. How you all doing? Just getting ourselves situated. Hope you all enjoying your Tuesday. Hey, hey, what's going on? Okay. So I'm going to do a quick introduction to our artist of the day. Her name is Kim Holt, and she is a digital designer who has so many amazing talents. She is really inspiring, and yeah, I'm just going to bring her right on up. So let's get her up here. And she's up soon. Hey, what's going on?
Not much. I did
Oh,
it.
yay! So welcome, Kim, to Art Talk. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday. How are you
Thank you.
feeling?
Good, good. I hope you can
Good.
see me.
Yeah, I can see
All
you.
right, good.
You're
How are
looking
you?
amazing. I'm good, thank you.
Awesome.
So I gave them a quick little introduction of you, but if you'd like to introduce yourself, please do so.
Okay, so I am Kim Holt, and by day, I am an experience design leader, which means that I work on experiences for software. And then outside of that, my real passion is illustration, and particularly illustration for children's books, which I do most of that digitally. So just because it's a medium that I've mastered somewhat, not fully, but there's always more to learn. But just delivery of assets that way, and it's just something that I've been doing for a couple of years, and so that's how I tend to do most of my work.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So before we get started into the questions, and I'm probably gonna have to mention this in the middle of our interview. If you all have any questions at the end, she will be answering questions. So you'll look down at your comment section, you'll see a little question mark, click in that, and you can type your comments or your questions there, and I'll be able to answer them at the end, okay? But in the meantime, let's get into our questions. And let's see. How did you become interested in digital art? If you want to talk about that.
Sure. I started, so I've always used natural media, right?
Hmm.
Particularly when I was studying in school. Um, but then when I was in school way back when, there was a software that had come out called Painter, and it was probably out, prior to that, but it kind of allowed you to digitally recreate or attempt to recreate. It's gotten progressively better, natural media through the computer. And so what that means is that it's not vectorized, right? It does have some vector capabilities, but
Hmm.
it's not like Illustrator where when you do something, you can make it vector. So it scales. So when you draw it, you have to draw it at a high enough resolution and a high enough scale to be able to do it. And at the time, I had wanted to create these superhero representations in my family. So I was just doing it for myself and just like trying out to see if what I was doing in school on paper, I could actually recreate in the computer.
Ooh.
And then I just kind of liked it, but you never want to lose your skills in one or the other. So even if I do stuff digitally, you still got to like make sure that you still, if I paint that way, I still have to make sure I know how to paint
Oh, I
with
understand.
natural media, because it's very, it's different. And yes, you can erase stuff. You do it digitally, you can erase it. You can start it all over. You can do it on layers. Where with natural media, you really have to practice your hand at getting good at it because it's not as forgiving. You might have to scrap the whole thing if you can't fix whatever
Yeah,
your mistake was.
you
Yeah.
get a little shaky hand or something like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Did you have any artists that inspired you, or did it kind of happen gradually? Like, how did you get
No, there
inspired?
there are always artists that I like for different things, right? Either like their use of color, Jacob Lawrence, I really, really love his work. And I actually had a chance to meet him in college, and spend some time at his house, talking to him and his wife. It was really, really cool. Um, and like Aaron Douglas, there's just certain people. I'm really attracted to like pops of color.
Mm-hmm.
But just like the way people thematically put together. And then there are other artists. There's one, Nikolai Fechin, that I learned about when I was in school, but his use of line and particularly pencils. I mean, he's not with us right anymore, but he's one of the few non-Black artists that I really like, just love the simplicity of the line, but it's like very expressive and has a lot of emotion. So
Mm.
those are just like a few. I mean, I could pull through the recesses.
Yeah,
But
of
if I think
course.
of like ones that I like their storytelling and their images, those Jacob Lawrence and Aaron Douglas are two that come to mind.
Yeah, so let's talk about kind of like your storytelling. You mentioned that you kind of wanted to create superheroes of your family members. Is that kind of when you started getting into storytelling, or were you like kind of the kid that was like writing little storybooks
No,
and things
so
like?
I don't write very much, right? I love stories and I could talk, but but when it comes to writing things, not necessarily. But I love comic books. And
Mm,
the thing that I love about comic books is that they can succinctly tell a story in a very small frame, right? And
mhm.
so for work, I had to do some of that with some work that I was doing years ago. And then I was kind of like inspired to say, okay, well, since I want to try this medium, let me see if I could do my family. And, deep down inside, a lot of us identify with superheroes or like superheroes. But when it
Yeah.
comes to like storytelling in a picture, when I was a kid, I used to love books that you could like want to feel like you wanted to like climb in the book and climb in the picture because of the scene. And so when I create stuff, that's kind of like my goal, especially
Okay.
for kids, is to have enough there or enough emotion or something like that that they kind of wish they were in that same scene. So
Hmm.
that's what I like about the storytelling aspects, like of comic books, just kind of making it very succinct and putting it in, one or two pictures.
What is your favorite comic book?
Well, I'm a Marvel fan. In particular, I'm
Woo!
a Storm fan, so she is my favorite. Um,
Yay.
and I definitely like her series. There's a few others that are like if I look over to my shelf, I could probably
Pick
probably
them
find
out.
them. Yeah.
Awesome. Now I heard you mention color. I really am big into color, and if you look at her work, you'll see that she has a lot of color. I wanted to know like your relationship with color. Like, were you always kind of interested in bright colors and these vibrant things, or did it kind of slowly happen like when you were in school? I know some people they kind of get into color when they go to do color theory and they're like, oh wow, I didn't know that color can do these things or transform this way. But when did you start, realizing the power of color in your artwork?
I've always liked color, and I think for me, it's kind of like with children's books in particular, things have to kind of like thematically kind of go together. So it's not the same as your environment, but I have lots of colors in my house. Um, and I don't know, it's just something about color. I've been experimenting with more pale tones. Um, and I've actually been liking some of the results where I thought everything had to be really brilliant and really bright, but some of the paler tones, particularly against darker skin. I mean, you know
Mm-hmm.
that like in real life, like when you get dressed, it looks good, but sometimes on
Hmm.
the page, I'm
It
always
might
afraid
look a
it's going
little
to get
different.
washed out or something like that. But it actually looks really, really good. I still refer to color theory books and color pattern books because sometimes I'll get certain colors kind of locked in my head, and those are the only
Hmm.
ones that I work with for a time. And so I use that to kind of break away and experiment with something different that I may not have touched before.
Nice. And
Mhm.
what have you experimented? I see that some mediums that you work with is watercolor, how do you say
Gouache.
gouache?
Gouache. Yeah.
Yes, gouache, acrylics, and of course digital work. Are those the only mediums that you work in, or are there any other kind of styles or materials that you're kind of playing with?
So I like pencil drawing. I love charcoal. That used to be my favorite, especially when I was in school.
Hmm.
I like acrylic because I don't have the patience for oil paints, but I love oil paints. But it's just like you have to have care and time, right, when you're dealing with that. And then if you don't like it, you can, scrub the whole thing. But I like acrylics, but like very thinned so that because they dry quick and you can get
Hmm.
watercolor effects with them because I like watercolor as well. But that's something else that you have to kind of like master and let it kind of do its thing, but you can control it like very finely if you practice at it. And
Hmm.
because sometimes I lack the patience that's required for oil or watercolor, I like using acrylic because I can get some of the effects that I want because you can have it really thick or you can have it very thin.
Hmm.
If I draw by hand, like on natural media, I'll use that like with color pencils, um, markers, just kind of blend them all together to get the effect that I want.
Nice. And did you get that at school? Or did you get that technique from school? I see you went to Howard and you also went to AAU, the Academy of Art University. Is that like where you got that?
No, I just kind of made it up. And then
Oh,
like
no.
you see what other people do and then you're like, "Oh, okay, they mix this in colored pencil, so I'll try that."
Nice.
One of my friends who's also a children's book artist, Vanessa Brantley Newton, she does a lot of experimenting and she has mentored me over the years. And I think from watching what she did, I started kind of experimenting that way. Um,
Nice.
just because I tend to be more traditional
Hmm.
and that kind of helped me break out of that.
Speaking of traditional, you do mention on your website that it's important for you to disrupt traditional modes. And I just want to know, like, what are some ways that you do that? I'm really into, kind of breaking the walls and barriers through art and kind of disrupting the natural way that people, view art. I think that art is supposed to change and evolve the way human beings do. And I was wondering, like, of course digital work is like a huge way of doing that, right from your classical paintings and sculptures. So like what are other ways that you disrupt that traditional mode?
I don't know how disruptive I am, but I definitely I like, so when I think about like user experience or like what I do during the daytime,
Hmm.
that's definitely like a disruptive force, right? Because digital media in that sense. When I think about it from it's a lot more widely accepted as is illustration being art, right? Because for a long time, illustration was not considered art in any
Art,
way,
yeah.
shape, or form. I think getting people to acknowledge that just because you created something in the computer digitally and you don't have like a physical form for it is a bit disruptive because it's still artistic. You still created it. It's still art. So maybe in that way, I also tend to draw people more joyful, definitely more happy. And so maybe in some way that's disruptive because I feel like there's enough like eh, in the world. And when
Yeah,
I think of things that I want to create, I might have those feelings, but I don't necessarily want to create things that are, that are kind of somber
dark.
or sad. I think
Yeah.
there's a place for it, right? And I think that it's very necessary because it's a real emotion, but I tend to like to want to be happy and try to feel happy. And so I try to create things that would bring people joy when they look at it and make them smile. So maybe I'm disruptive that way. I don't know.
That's a good way to disturb things, honestly. That's how you got into designing or creating for kids. Your work for kids is beautiful. I mean, I'm like, where's the book? I want the book.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
in school, in art school, I studied animation, and I
Mhm.
love animation, and I always wanted to be an animator. And one day I will do something actually with it. But it was during that time that I was kind of like, oh, I really like drawing, art for children. I like drawing children, and at the time, I didn't even actually know that that's something I could have studied instead of animation.
Right.
I don't regret studying animation at all, but it would have given me kind of a different perspective because you kind of have to not unlearn, but it's a completely different way of drawing things. And I studied to be a character animator and characters, and I love people and portraiture. And so doing people is my favorite thing, but environments are not so much. And probably had I studied the other, like you learn environments in animation, but you know that if you're ever working in a studio and you're not an environment person, you're never gonna have to do that, right? So, so you
Hmm.
just stick with the thing that you do. But with
Yeah.
children's books, it's a whole different thing because you're responsible for the whole shebang and understanding that the environment itself is also a character in the story. And so that took me like several years to kind of learn how to infuse that in there.
Nice. I definitely want you to talk about these children books that you keep mentioning. I like really want to
Oh,
get into it. But before we do that, because I know it's going to be juicy, I know you guys have some questions. So once again, next to your comments, your comment bar, you're going to see a question mark on the right-hand side. If you want to ask her a question, please, please, please put your questions right there. And at the end, I will get to them as many as we can. But for now, let's get into these children's books. Like what's going on? What are we working with right now? What are we
so
doing?
my new projects I can't really discuss at all.
Of course.
Yes, unfortunately, no sneak peeks, no things like that. But what I do, like for myself, so one of the pieces that you can kind of see behind me, and I have my bifocals on, so it's hard for me to, to
I
look in
understand.
both directions. But usually, what I'll do, so I have this thing called Olive and the Fox, and so I
Yes.
have another business that's Cracking Eight with my business partner, and we create children's games. And we'd started doing that, I want to say like 2015, maybe 2013. I can't remember. But just kind of focused around children. And then last year, 2 weeks before the whole COVID shutdown, we had launched Olive and the Fox doll. But she's based on my granddaughter, and so the picture in the pink that you can see kind of in the back is her and the fox in the bath. And so what I would do was just kind of like imagine scenarios, either based on things that she said or things that I thought would be kind of fun or different.
Hmm.
And when she was younger, I don't know, I like foxes. And so I had this thing that I was always going to get her a fox every year for her birthday, like some kind of
Oh,
stuffed animal or socks or something like that. And so that's just kind of like how that um, evolved. But we did create a doll. So I have the doll here because I knew I couldn't reach
yes.
back
Can
there.
we
So I have
see
the
the
doll,
doll?
fox doll. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love her.
So she's there, but not the book yet because, it would have to be written.
We're manifesting it. We're manifesting it.
Right.
So where can we find it? On Etsy? Where can we
Yeah,
at least
so
if they want?
so we have an Etsy shop. And if you were to go to and I have to look up so I can read. If you were to go to my Instagram, Kim Holt, and then there's Krakenate Instagram. But if you were to go to mine, you can still get to either. You can get to Krakenate Instagram. You could get to the link for the doll as well.
Nice.
Mhm.
Do you plan on doing more dolls in the future after everything kind of opens back up?
Possibly. I mean, this one is one that I probably like to like focus on evolving, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, like as far as a character. But I hadn't really thought about it beyond that because I want to see, like, even though we sold out of the ones that we had, I would just like to see how it would do when things are doing well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'll wait before kind of making plans to do something else with it and just try to see like how it does the way it was represented so
Oh,
far.
of course, of course. Okay, let's see. Um, did you want to talk about kind of, I know a lot of people or some people are interested in design work and, kind of getting into this medium and they don't exactly know what steps to take. So could you kind of like briefly talk about kind of the steps and the way that you manifested this dream of being able to, use your creativity in your own daily work, but at the same time being able to take a leap of faith on yourself, right? And, put your work out there and creating these designs for these books that we keep mentioning. How did you go about kind of manifesting that into reality other than just,
Uh,
creating?
so the first thing I would say is that I have a superior support system around me. My immediate family, my extended family, my friends, and my art community, right? But my core base of like family and friends are my bedrock. And so it's kind of like you have fits and starts and things that you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
but they're always kind of rallying and saying, okay, you should do this. And if I say I want to do something, they like help me figure out how to get it done or kind of hold me to it, but help me get there. So the first thing I would say is that in 2019, I had decided that I was just going to kind of draw things that made me happy, right? That
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do, not things so much that it's like, well, I'm hoping that this will give me a good portfolio, but more, this is the kind of stuff that I wanted to draw. And I actually started putting myself out there more, like getting portfolio critiques from people, but I was in a position to kind of be able to do that. Going to a couple of conventions where things like that could happen, where people who don't know you can kind of look at your stuff and give you industry kind of feedback. And so from there, I was kind of like, I don't know. So I'll just draw what I want to draw. And then last year, I think early last year, I had posted on a website called Women Who Draw. And then a museum reached out to me to ask if I would create a piece for voter suppression. And so that's this actual little piece here because
Yeah, can we?
my print isn't here, but it's a Vote Baby Vote piece. And of course, I like reached out. I showed Kiana and Jay and some of my close friends because I only had like a week to turn it around. And so I was kind of like, I don't even know if I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have learned is like if you say no too often, then people stop asking you. So there are times when you have to say yes. So I was glad I said yes. Because I actually didn't even know it was juried. I just thought they were like, oh, your work is so great. Just enter it in, right? So I kind of souped myself up there. But I entered it in, and then she was like, yeah, your piece made it. So that was news to me because I thought it was going to make it anyway. But then they ended up using it as the lead piece. And I think just based on the year that we had last year, it was really great. But from there, over the summer, I started drawing more things I have like a cache of old photos, and I kind of like to reimagine the family and friends that are like from the 40s in a lot of these photos and redress them a little bit more modern or things that I would want them to wear. And so I started doing those kind of drawings, and I was telling some friends, I was like, I wonder if my stuff is good enough to get an agent. And I kind of put it out there again, right? And one of my friends linked me up with her agent. Vanessa actually linked me up with her agent, and then I had an agent. And so when she was kind of like, well, what do you want to do? Of course I want to do children's books, but she was like, no, like really, what do you know, like, what do you want to do with this? And I hadn't really thought about it like that because I wasn't in the same kind of position, but it forced me to think about it. And then I want to say maybe 2 weeks after her, then I got signed for a picture book that I'm working on now, which is really, really exciting. And it's kind of great, but it's forced me to really, like, really hone my work a lot more than I had ever kind of done before. But I would say that, like, just kind of putting it out there in the world, the things that you want to do. For instance, me joining the league, I happened to talk to Sonia right before I moved back here from LA. And I was like, I really want to be more involved in the art community, and I wish there was a group I could be a part of. And we happened to be talking about it once I touched back down in the area. And then she was like, I have a group, let me introduce you. And so it's, so it's been really, really great. So I would just encourage people to put it out there. But as far as like digital medium, you got to pick what's good for you, and you really have to practice at it. I think a lot of people think digital is easier. It's easier in terms of I can erase it and I haven't lost maybe everything, but sometimes you do have to scrap it. Sometimes it is garbage and you just have to kind of like start over.
And
But I
let
would
it
always say
go.
finish it so you can see it, and then I save it. I keep everything so that I can see like how things have progressed over time. So I have drawings like from when I was 6, right? Because I just like
Really?
to see how things have evolved, like how I used to draw people or any of those things. Um,
Did you draw
but
stick figures or did you kind of embellish?
like a modified version of stick figures, a modified version.
I
Yeah,
love it.
draw much
Oh,
better
that's
now.
awesome.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So would you say that that was like your first big project, the Vote Baby Vote, or did you have something else before that that kind of was like, like you said, I want to put my work out there, but was there something before that someone was like, I want, can you sell this to me? You'd be like, whoa, maybe, let me
No,
see. That was
not
it?
at all. Yeah,
All right.
I think it's more. So, so don't get me wrong. Like I've had friends and family like buy pieces from me, but I think it was just more when I was just not drawing what I thought people want, as opposed to
Mhm.
drawing what I wanted to draw. Is the difference.
Okay. Okay, nice. Um, so I know that you teach, because you were talking about how digital work isn't easy, and I completely understand that because I am not a digital person at all. I'm like, give me the tools, I'll sit in the studio and sweat if I have to. So like, and you teach at Micah, correct?
I do. I don't teach art. I teach user experience there.
Oh,
Um,
what
but
is? Go
so
ahead.
the job that I do like during the day for software.
Oh, yes.
But I would say that the crossover is the attention to detail,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the attention to detail on an interface is the same type of attention to detail that you would have to do for something that you're creating, um, art wise, so that it doesn't look sloppy, so that when people are paying for it and they, really get up in it and inspect it, they're like, this is really good work. Like you've captured all the details, all the nuances. So I would say that that's what I kind of teach students, like to pay attention to the details, pay attention to how somebody's going to experience the thing that they are creating,
Mm-hmm.
for user experience. But it definitely translates to me to art, like what you want people to feel when they're experiencing your work.
And what do you want people to feel when they experience your work,
I
other
want
than
them to feel
joy?
happy. I definitely want them to reminisce. I like it when people say that it reminds them of, when I draw adults in particular, that it
Mm-hmm.
reminds them of their aunts or their grandmother, or they're like, oh, one of my friends, I did a picture recently and he's like, my grandmother had that same robe and that same Bible, right? So just kind of making them think back to how I like to imagine is, you know, how you have those days, and sometimes it's like the best day ever, and you think you're never going to forget it, and then you
Yeah.
do, right? But it's still like something will happen and makes you recall that day. That same kind of like feeling, intangible kind of feeling, is what I would like people to think of.
So you like nostalgia kind of.
Yeah,
You begin to say,
definitely.
yeah, I'm definitely a nostalgic person. I'm like, oh, I like to sit and remember when and all this and that. And I really pull inspiration from um older traditions. I'm really into like the 30s and then
Hmm.
also into like the 70s at the same time, which is like kind of very different, but I think that they're very inspiring, especially how women were moving in those eras was just so amazing, especially since it's Women's History Month,
Yeah.
got to show us
Yeah.
some love. Um what would you say um changed your perspective in art? Was it going to school or was it just it just evolved over time?
I would say it evolved over time. When I was a kid, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, before moving down to Maryland, and I lived for a time directly across the street from the Brooklyn Museum.
Oh,
And that was when, you know, you could let your kids wander off all day by themselves. And
right.
so I would go to the museum all the time, just any free moment that I had. And there was like a park nearby, so sometimes I would meet my friends, but they all knew like that's where I would go
Mm.
and hang out and just be with the exhibits and any activity. I don't even know if I was allowed to really wander around the museum the way that I did, but I think because I was there so often, the museum people kind of let me do my thing, because I swear I was there weekly, right? I mean, it was literally across the street. So it was a 5 minute, like not even 5 minute walk. Um, but I've always been fascinated with art, always loved art, like going to museums, just staring at different pieces. I would say going to school where I thought I could draw really, really great. I was very humbled immediately, like day one. Um, whew. So I had a lot to learn. But that's also because, you know, my friends and family are very much like, you know, you can do anything, right? You just plan for it and whatever, and you can do whatever. And so I think that really like went with me when I started school, and then when I actually learned how to draw, right,
Yeah.
made a huge difference in just my skill level immediately.
Yeah,
Immediately.
I completely understand. When I first went to school, my first art school officially was like in high school, and my teacher, my drawing teacher made us draw lines for like 3 weeks, and I was just
Hmm.
like, what is this? And then we had to draw a square or like a cube, and I was like,
Yeah.
this is easy. He was like, this is horrible. I was just like, I thought I was pretty good at this. But yeah, I do agree that, it does. I feel like the way you appreciate and look at art definitely evolves as you grow, and the more you practice and the more you learn, and different artists you learn about, and different techniques and different places you go and see, and different museums you check out. Did you have any museums or galleries that you would love to work with or work in?
Um, I hadn't thought about that actually, but I would say that if I had to have a piece in a museum, maybe I'd want it to be a portrait that I'd done, but which museum? I hadn't really thought that far. I just feel like, okay, I could just put more museums in the air, and
Yeah,
then, you know, I'm not like choosy, right?
yeah, of course, of course.
Because I
It was
think you
just like
usually go from gallery to museum. So I
mhm.
could skip right to museum. I'd be fine.
I mean, you kind of jumped already further. I saw that you did a what did you do? What is the game called? Uh, uh it was a game that you made for the White House, I believe, for a
Oh,
project.
yeah. So that is kind of like a extension of the children's game company, but we participated, and I had another friend. So it was my friends, Greg Pearson and Robin Owens, and we participated in a White House game jam when Obama was in office, and they used to have these kinds of activities going on, but it was like almost like a hackathon. So you had a weekend to create a game, but because we had been working on a game, but it had to have educational stuff, and Robin knew all of those things, right? You had to meet certain marks, and if you didn't, you would get kicked out. But it was a great
Oh,
experience because we got to present our game. Um, I'm trying to think. It wasn't like at the White House, but like an office offshoot of it. But you got to formally present it in front of an audience. And we got to meet a lot of other game makers who were really interested in kind of potentially, working with us on extending our game. But it was a great experience. Tiring, got to put it in front of kids, but I spent all my time like doing the art and that sort of thing. But we had to have like music and soundtrack and just all of the things that actually go into a game. And so I think some of the assets we already had, but that was kind of like a clue to say, okay, well, maybe you could actually do something with this
nice.
more
Do you
so.
think that you would use that kind of style and techniques for Olive and the Fox? Maybe adding a game to it?
Yeah, I've thought about it. But like what exactly, I don't know, because I feel like there's like a lot of stuff that I could plan for, and I definitely am a planner, right?
Hmm.
That you can execute. I tend to not kind of wing it, but I probably should wing some stuff a little bit more. But I've thought about it, but I actually just haven't like spent time focusing on, well, what would that look like or what would that be? I know there's been lots of requests for a book or something, and so it's kind of like, well, if I had to split time or dedicate time, which one would it, would it be, or would it be both? But um, since it's small, you can't do all the things all the time at once. So really,
Of
just
course.
kind of focusing. But I thought about it. I just don't know what it would be.
No, of course, of course. Um, and another question before we get into the questions from the folks is what impact do you want your work to leave behind after you finish all your amazing projects, like, and you're finally done, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna put the computer down, or I guess the the pencil down,
Right.
both. What is the big thing that you want to say and let the people know and with your
Um,
art?
so I would like to leave a positive wake, right? So you know how there's like a boat that leaves a wake when they move by.
Mhm.
And sometimes it can make everything topsy turvy and flip things over. I would like to leave a positive legacy, or like make people smile, make people think of that best day ever. Like, so what if they have a peace of mind or have ever purchased anything or experienced any of it? That's really what would be important to me, to leave behind, is that a positive impact.
Oh, well, you definitely shine love and light all the way from here. I can
Oh,
feel it.
thanks.
So you're definitely already starting to make that impression on the world. Let's get into these questions from the folks. By the way, again, for those who didn't catch it the first two times, there's a little question button next to your comment bar. If you want to ask a question, please put your questions down there and I will be able to get to them. So let's get to this first question. I wear bifocals too. I have my contacts that are slowly dying with me. But let's see. We have from Jay, he says, do you recommend artists to have agents or managers and why?
Um, I love having an agent. I've never had either, but I love someone saying, do you want to do this? And here's the pros and cons. And I don't have to like look for any of it. I I love that. And fielding things that are, you know, time wasters, right? Because you do get people who reach out, but they don't want to pay, or they think that because they're paying, you should do it like this, you know, fast, that it doesn't require a whole lot of thought behind it. But I would say that so far my agent experience has been great. Now, and I know that's not the case for everybody, right? Some people have agents who really don't work for them at all, but mine has. It's been a blessing, and I I recommend it, right? Some people say, well, you don't want to necessarily pay an agent a fee, but I remember somebody famously saying, well, you may not want to pay a 10 or 20% of your fee to an agent, but like 0% of nothing, right? Still nothing. So you either can have somebody who steadily gets you work and you pay them for that time they put into it, or maybe you have nothing and you don't have to pay anybody and you're not getting paid either. So, but I've never had a manager, but so far I like the agent route.
Do you think, and this is just me asking, do you think, in terms of picking one, like, do you kind of use your discernment and your intuition, or like, and also, of course, doing research and background checks and things like that, or how do you think people would, because I feel like some people, especially a lot of artists, kind of get bamboozled and hoodwinked into allowing people to come into the space and then kind of not exactly,
Yeah. So I think I was fortunate that I honestly don't have any recommendations there, because I think I was fortunate that one of my good friends recommended their agent to me, and their agent, based on their word, was willing to talk to me, right?
okay.
Because I had done, you know, the research and reached out, and you don't necessarily hear back anything at all. So I don't even know what that's like if somebody's approaching you. I think I was approached maybe by two, but then when I responded, they didn't necessarily respond back. So you can never tell, you know, what that is. But I do think that you have to look at, because even though my friend recommended her agent to me, I still wanted to kind of look at her track record, look at other people that she represented, and what kind of work they were doing, to see, is that an agency that I wanted to be a part of.
Okay, that's good to know. So all you all that are trying to figure out if you want an agent, do your research because that's what's needed. All right, let's see what else. Ooh. Okay, we have um R. Holt Jr. He says, is that your son or
My husband.
your husband? Okay. Hey, hubby. He says, when did you know you were ready for an agent? Okay.
Um, I think last summer so I thought I was ready years ago, and I had an agent spend an hour with me, and she was like, you have these people, they're great. I don't know where they're standing. I don't know what the scene is. This kid has ice cream and she's wearing a turtleneck. Like, what season is it? Like, just any of those things. So I went back and like redid everything, literally
Oh,
every piece that I thought was great. And I appreciated the time that she spent there. But this past summer, doing the pieces the way that I wanted to do them, and just kind of exploring, like evolving my style, which is still evolving, right? Just in the past couple of months. I felt like I was ready. And that's when I reached out to people, because the other thing that I realized is that while I reached out to my friend Vanessa about an agent, like her word, right, her vouching for me, then I needed to definitely be ready. Like I couldn't reach out and then have her call somebody and literally call me an hour later and then be like, oh, well, I don't know. So if you're going to ask people to kind of put their name on the line for you, then you need to be prepared and you need to be ready. And so I felt like I had pieces to show. I was ready for any kind of critique or feedback. And I was literally ready to, I was in a meeting and I remember she's like, you're going to get a call in an hour, answer the phone, make sure you answer the phone. So I was ready to answer the phone and take that call. So I would just say that's how I was prepared for whatever should occur. And that's how I knew I was ready.
Nice. All right. That was a really good question. Let's see. Jay, I'll come back. Okay, so Jay asks, are you a full-time artist?
I am not a full-time artist. I am a full-time creative. So I get to be creative during the day and I get to be creative in the evening, but I am not yet a full-time illustrator artist in that way.
He also wants to know who's your agent.
I will tell you afterwards. No, actually, her name is Lori Nowicki, and I am represented by Painted Words, and that's on my Instagram.
Shout out to Painted Words and shout out to Lori. We heart you. All right. Let's see. We have one more question. Aristo Arts says, what are your thoughts about NFT art trend? About the NFT art trend. I don't know what that is.
So I'm actually, it's interesting that you brought this up because one of my close friends sent me a text message on Sunday, I think, about it. And then my son was asking me about it because he's a graphic designer. And I have all these links that I have to look into it. But I actually think it's a good trend, particularly if you're a digital artist. But how I understand it, and don't quote me on this, is it's a way for getting paid for your digital work. I think it involves like Bitcoin, right?
Okay.
Or some type, and there's different types, but it's a way for getting paid for your work. But I also think that, on aftermarket, right? Like, so some artists, like, let's say if, I'm just using this because I saw it in a documentary. Let's say if you sold a work that was $100,000, but then in aftermarket, somebody buys it for $3 million, you like never see that money. So while people think you're rich, you got
You're
your
not.
100,000 that you then had to pay like all your other fees and whatever else on, but somebody else, the gallery that sold it in aftermarket, like gets that chunk of change and you don't see it. I think it's a way, and don't quote me, but I think it's also a way for you to kind of see some aftermarket money as well. But I think it's a good
Okay.
thing at the moment, but I still have to do some investigating.
Okay, well, I might have to do some investigating too. Maybe I need to get into the digital world as well, because that
Yeah.
sounds pretty nice. All right, if you all have any more questions, let me just scroll through the comments really quick to triple check. Let's see. No, I'm not seeing any more questions in the comments. Do you have anything that you like to tell people? Anything that you're working on other than the secret? Anything else that you might be working on, that you want the people to know about? Or where they can find you and
So you can definitely find me. My Instagram has a link tree with all the links to the rest of my presence. Oh, thank you. I can finally see one because it's at the bottom. Thank you. Um, But I'll be excited to kind of like share the book projects, when I can. I have my Kim's Collection of Stuff, which is my illustration website. I have Kraken 8, which is the children's game and Olive Doll website. And I just really want to thank everybody who joined this evening to support me and ask those questions and just kind of be here for me. Like I said, friends, family, that core is wonderful. Like I have an outstanding support system and I'm thankful for it. So I would like everyone who is here to hear that. It's here for posterity. I love you all, and I'm like super thankful. And I'm thankful for all the opportunities that I'm getting and the way that it's like shaping the work that I'm doing. Because it's not just for me, it's for other people, and I want them to kind of see the level of effort that they are receiving in return for trusting me with their vision.
Oh, that's so warming. Oh, we have one more. Let's see. It says, why is art in the community important to you?
Um, I just think like, imagine this past year with no books, pictures, movies, nothing to listen to at all, right? Like you can imagine a day or something without it, right? But
No.
imagine last year with nothing creative.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's why art
scary.
is important. Like just that thought. Like you don't have any books, you don't have pictures to look at, no photo, photography, no one to listen to sing a song, even the song they made up on the spot. Just nothing, right? We all miss those things and kind of gathering together. But imagine if you just didn't have them at all personally. That to me, it like just says it in a nutshell. That's why we go crazy. You literally go crazy
No,
because you have no
honestly.
outlet at all.
So you all, art is very important. If you're not into it, get you some, put some on the walls, hit up Kim, get yourself some things. Yeah. Thank you so much. So before we close ourselves out, for each episode I've done, we're doing a versus. So this is something I did not talk to you about,
Ah,
and I ask you questions on the spot, and you have to pick
okay.
one versus the other in 30 seconds or less. Okay?
Okay.
So let me get my timer ready for you. Make sure we have the sound up so we can hear the buzzing. So there's just four of them.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll get started right now. Okay, so this one is your content, adults or children creating.
Children.
Okay, do you prefer web design or book illustration?
Trick question. Both.
Okay, motion illustrations are still digitals.
Um, Both. They have their
Okay.
place.
Oh, that's time. We have one more. So I'll get this last one in really quickly. So
Okay.
teaching versus designing, which full time, full time.
Ugh, you got me with these. If I had to pick, I'd design, right? Because
Of
you're
course.
involved. But I love teaching. I love
Yes,
teaching and passing on what I know.
we love to teach. We love to be students. We love to be teachers, of course, of course. So, well, thank you so much, Kim. If you could one more
Thank you.
time let us know where they can find you, where they can get all their things, and if they want to get that doll in those books when it comes out.
If you go
Let
to
it.
my Instagram, Kim Holt, it'll have links to everything. It'll have links to Kim's collection of stuff. It'll have links to Kraken 8, where you can find the doll, and Kim's collection of stuff, where you can find the illustrations. So it's like a nice one-stop shop.
Nice, nice. Any last words for the folks or last bit tips for the people before we go?
No, I just want to thank everybody who joined and thanks for the support, the love, the feedback, the critiques. So I thank you all.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We heart you and happy National Women's History Month. I
That's
hope
right.
you are being fabulous and being all woman that you are and conquering the
Thank you.
world every hair flip at a time, okay?
Thank you.
And you're people are saying you're fabulous. You're fabulous. Of course she
Thank
is.
you. I appreciate it.
All right, well, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Have a
All
good night,
right.
everybody.
All right, take care.
Bye bye.
Bye. So thank you all for coming out to another art talk. It was great. Kim was awesome. You know it's your girl Indigo Child. Make sure you give Kim a follow at Kim KIM Holt HOLT. Click on those links, get some stuff. And if you missed our art talk, don't worry. We're going to post it on our page in just a moment. And if you don't want to watch it there, if you have friends and family that don't want to see it there, they don't have Instagram or social media, it's okay because we're going to have it on YouTube in just a few. All right. We want to especially thank the DMV League for letting us have this platform. Shout out to Kim and everybody. Make sure that you follow us and keep up with the next art talk for next week, where we're going to have another amazing artist coming to you live. You know what time, you know what place, 7 o'clock on Tuesdays. It's your girl, Indigo Child, the Love Child, and I am out of here for another one. Peace, love, and lot grease. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Stay warm.